helmet's still frozen.
Oh, that's all right. I'll get to it. There you go.
All right, we're actually going to start today like we start 7th hour, not the beginning of the day. There's a prayer we say, you might know, at the beginning of 7th hour called the Examine Prayer. It's a signature prayer of St. Ignatius. He asks that all Jesuits say it once or twice a day, and Jesuit students around the world say it hopefully once or twice a day as well. It's a bit of a meditation. I'll walk you through it. It's not that long. And we'll begin. So it's a good idea to begin with posture. Really simple. I tell the boys just to sit up relatively straight, and it's not uncomfortable. It's relatively straight, feet on the floor, and hands in a comfortable place in your lap. And I invite you to close your eyes. And we'll take a deep breath and exhale slowly. Okay, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. We always start prayer by knowing that we're in the presence of God and that God loves us. Spend a few moments and reflect on that. So the first of 5 steps of the exercises is to name some graces and blessings that you experience, either in the day or in general, and give thanks for these graces and blessings as signs of God's love. So these could be relationships, these could be talents, these could be reputations that you enjoy. Just name 1 or 2 gifts or blessings, and in your own words, give thanks to God for them, because they are signs of God's love for you. The second step of the Examine Prayer is a little peculiar. At least I don't think about sin much like this outside of the Examine Prayer. But we pray for a special grace to know sins as foreign things. One Jesuit explains that we should come to know sins like wet clothes. Like you just want to get rid of these wet clothes because they bother you, they're foreign, right? So in your own words, pray for the grace to know your sins as foreign, as odd, and to want to rid yourself of them. The third step of the Examine is kind of the centerpiece. Typically, we ask for an account of our whole day. We ask the Holy Spirit to show us our entire day. For the sake of time, let's ask the Holy Spirit to show us the day starting at about lunchtime. And the idea is you imagine that the day is unfolding moment by moment or by episode, starting at lunchtime and going all the way to the present moment. And as this happens, you're recalling thoughts, words, and actions, and reassessing, did these things lead me towards God, or did they distract me from God? You're also trying to identify maybe some major emotions that came up throughout the day, and doing the same thing with those. Did these emotions lead me towards God, or take me away? So let's do that for a moment. Continue that process of viewing our day like a movie being played back. maybe recalling conversations, maybe the drive here, images that pop up relatively easily in your mind from throughout the day. And as a third step comes to a close, it can be helpful to kind of latch on just a little bit longer to one or two things that you want to cherish and relish their meaning and importance. The fourth step of the examine, after our recount of our day, is it kind of recalls the first step. And we remember that God loves us and that God is an eager forgiver. He's lavish in his forgiveness. And so in our own words, we ask God to forgive us of sins from the day or from beforehand. Anything that's on our heart, we simply ask God to lift this burden. And the fifth and final step of the examen looks towards the rest of the evening and into tomorrow. And we name simply one or two things. These are changes or amendments to our thoughts and our actions, mostly small ones that we can achieve, that help us become the person God is asking us to be. This could be changing a way of thinking, changing in a small way a habit that we're trying to maybe eliminate fully later. Maybe it's paying attention to our spouse or our children more, putting our phone down, things like that. So name one or two things and dedicate yourself, knowing that they're only achievable through the grace of God. And St. Ignatius asks us to close the exam in prayer with the Our Father. So let's go ahead and do that. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. St. Ignatius of Loyola. Amen. All right. So that's the exam prayer. Every day, and hopefully by the time your sons are seniors or juniors, maybe even by the end of this year, they've internalized those steps and they know those steps like the back of their hand. So everybody has two things to promote, and not a lot of time to do so. So this is perfect, actually. This is our prayer site. Relatively new. It launched about a year ago. The URL is quite simple. It's hard to see, but it's simple. It's PrayUDJ. If you search for it in the Apple App Store or the Android Store, you do have to search University of Detroit, and then that logo in the upper right-hand corner will come up. What the website does, it has three central functions. There's daily scripture. It's highlighted right there. It'll give you mostly the gospel reading of the day. And oftentimes there's other readings that go along with it. The other tab is an Ignatian reflection. These are special because they are written, there we go, I think exclusively by members of the community, folks in Jesuit schools, right? So yeah, this one was written by Liz Kelly. So she's an author, actually. She's an author from a Jesuit press. Oftentimes they're teachers at Jesuit high schools or professors at colleges. And then the other of the three is a prayer in the tradition of St. Ignatius. And that's ours for today. Other functions are you can see on the right there, there's a way to submit a prayer request. You You fill out that form, and the request comes to my office, and then I submit that out to our prayer team, and we often include it in our weekly rosaries, and if you like, we can say a mass for your intention as well. And the app also has a function to set an alarm to remind you to pray the examen. It's pretty great. And you can set it for 1:05, I think is when 7th hour starts, 1:03. So you can pray at the exact same time your son's praying it. So I don't know what that means exactly, but it sounds like a good idea. So the other thing, the last thing I'm here to talk about is the evening of reflection on October 16th. I put these flyers out a little bit ago, but they're on the table and I'll leave a bunch of extras. It's Dr. Gall's talk, and Dr. Gall's a campus minister. He's going to talk, or rather his talk is titled, "Will My Kids Have Faith, or Will My Faith Have Kids? Teens in Faith in the Age of Nuns." So if you're like me and are curious about adolescence, spirituality, and the development thereof, Dr. Gall will certainly give us a lot of insight on that and lead us through some reflection on that as well. So unless there's any questions, I'm off to the university because I'm late for class. All right. Thank you very much.
Can everyone hear me okay? Can you hear me in the back? Okay. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Anthony Trudell. I'm the principal here at U of D Jesuit, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here this evening after perhaps a long day of work. The focus, this is the first year where we're starting a series of grade level meetings, starting all the way from 7th grade all the way through senior year, with a theme around a particular topic that relates to your son's grade. So this particular theme of tonight talks about sophomore year. So we're going to talk to you about some nuts and bolts of sophomore year and some things and pieces of practical information that you'll find useful on the calendar. But then the other piece of this is the formational piece. And when you think of sophomore year, the terms cheerful, joy, happiness, contentment just don't come to mind. In fact, we apply the word slump to sophomore year. Slump is traditionally, there's the word sophomore slump. If you look it up in Wikipedia, there's actually a whole little piece on sophomore slump. And the good news is that it isn't unusual. It's not abnormal. That's one thing as a parent you need to understand and know. And take comfort in that. Okay? I can't tell you what you're going to learn tonight. You're going to walk out of here and have all the answers how to deal with your sophomore son. But you're going to leave with a context tonight that will hopefully help you as you go through this particular year and you encounter what it is that your son is going through and understand what's going on behind the scenes up here and in here. So I'm very happy to welcome, and it'll be introduced later, but Dr. Tim Hogan, who is a clinical psychologist and also a parent of a former U of D Jesuit Cub, has some amazing information for you. He's talked to our faculty a number of times in the past and done some professional development with us, and so I hope you'll find that piece helpful. The other thing I would encourage you to do after the conversations tonight is network. Begin to meet some other people, because what happens in sophomore year is this is the year where kids are starting, your sons are starting to figure out who they are. They're starting to test the waters. I don't necessarily agree with mom or dad's rule anymore. I've got my own sense of what should be, and then you got all the emotions and everything that center around all that. And so the question is what is the best response as a parent as your son is going through those times? And what do you do for yourself to bring yourself down, okay, on those days when it can be so trying and it tests your patience? So networking and having somebody to talk to who's going through it with you is, number one, is a big help. And number two, we hope to provide you with some tools tonight too. So welcome and enjoy the presentation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trudell. For those that don't know me, I'm Kyle Chandler, Dean of Students, in charge of all things fun, such as discipline, attendance, compliance, health records. It's funny, as Mr. Trudell was saying, sophomore year is that year where they know it all. Immediately I thought about a sophomore I talked to today. Sophomore year is typically the year where you hear this phrase, "I'm grown." If you haven't, it's coming. And when I first heard it, the kid said, "I'm grown." I said, there's an old ancient saying, you know, he who buys the toilet paper makes the rules. And the kid looked at me and I said, if you don't even buy the toilet paper, you're definitely not grown. You certainly don't make the rules. And so, before I jump into my piece, I want to say, number one, I care about your sons tremendously. I care about their well-being and formation tremendously. However, I'm here tonight for the purpose of self-preservation. What do I mean by that? That's what I said to the freshman parents. So I'm responsible for a lot of the structure and the discipline. And so orientation, every year your sons are in this space. And so during orientation, we kind of set the groundwork for the school year. So we're trying to navigate, when I do the presentation, between freshmen and seniors. So trying to keep seniors humble enough to where for 180 days, they don't try to take this place over. But at the same time, trying to tell freshmen that they're loved and cared for, and that I'm approachable and everything is, you know, fine. And so in the midst of trying to navigate that, I got a little excited one day during a presentation for juniors and seniors, and I saw a senior who walked up, didn't have his hair cut, and he had on these khakis that were short, and he had on these Nike athletic socks and these boat shoes. And I don't know why, it just sent me through the roof. And so I said, you know what, fellas, we're done with boat shoes. And the kids looked at me, and they just, oh my God. And you know what? I said, that's my job as Dean of Students. Good job. So I walked out of here feeling really good about myself, and then moments later, the email started to come in. Even with that, I was like, yeah, whatever. I'll just, you know, I'll ignore it. Then somebody came to a parent and said, Mr. Chandler, they're ripping you on Facebook. And when the parent said Facebook, I knew enough to say, they're not talking about the kids ripping me. It was the parents. And I was like, wait, what if the parents upset? What in the world? And so what I did was I learned from that situation. I learned tremendously a couple things. And one of the major pieces was the value of not making decisions in an emotional state. And to think properly, but also the value of communication. And so when I talk about self-preservation, tonight is a moment where I get a chance to communicate directly to the parents, as opposed to hoping that a 15 or 16-year-old boy will adequately communicate exactly what I said. So tonight, I'm excited to be in front of you. I'm hoping, again, it's been a long day. Hoping that we can break bread. There's coffee in the back. There are donuts, so there's sugar and caffeine. So we can get to 8 o'clock 100%. But as we're doing that, there's a pink sheet. There are a couple different sheets, but the pink sheet is the one that I'm going to go off of for the next maybe 5 minutes. Just because what I did is I went through some of the important dates on the calendar and just highlighted some that maybe you might need to have unpackaged for you a little bit, just to let you know what's really going on. For example, tomorrow we have a fundraiser dress down day. And so students are to bring in $5. They get donated to our immersion trips. They get donated to the Labra Ministry and various charities. They come in tomorrow morning, drop off their $5, and they can dress down. The way our dress down rules work is just because you dress down doesn't mean you get to be a slob for the day. And so if you give your kid the eye when he walks out the house, recognize that I'll be giving him an eye when he comes to school, and you may have to bring a change of clothes for him, right? So on dress down days, normally it's a spirit shirt, and then it's pants or shorts that have belt loops and a belt, right? Some kids really struggle with that, and some like to be in the gray. So they try to wear joggers that have, you know, belt loops, or they try to pull the drawstring out and use that as the belt. That doesn't work. So again, if you have doubts, go with that parental instinct that tells you this isn't gonna fly when you get to school, all right? The other piece is, if you look on the back of the pink sheet, right? The student activities fair is tomorrow. So a lot of you all are wondering, how do I get my son involved in more things? Maybe athletics, or maybe in addition to athletics. So tomorrow we have a super extended homeroom. So homeroom is an hour and a half. And during that time period, we have auditorium style set up in the gym. Like when you came here for open house, all of the student activities are going to be set up in the gym. We're going to bring the entire sophomore class down, and then each group can kind of do their little sales pitch and have kids sign up, and they'll have a mailing list, and they'll send emails whenever there are meetings, but your son can start to show interest. So what we encourage them to do is freshman year, sign up for everything imaginable, and then get a taste and see if you like it. Of course, you don't want to lead it, but you should be able to go to a couple of meetings and say, you know what, that's not what I thought it was. Maybe I don't want to go to any more meetings. By sophomore year, though, he should narrow that list of 15 probably down to about 5. 5 that he's trying to go to on a pretty consistent basis. And as I give you these numbers, like, don't write them down and say, you pick 5 tomorrow. It depends on your son's schedule, and it depends on his interests. He may walk away and say, there's really only one. I'm a robotics guy. I want to spend my time in robotics. I want to do, by all means, encourage that, but tomorrow's going to be the day when he can really express that interest and get things started. If your son or sons are involved in sports, remember, a lot of the co-curriculars exist throughout the entire school year. Some of the competitive co-curriculars obviously have a short window of time where they compete, but other than that, we have cultural groups, we have different competitive groups, we have a little bit of everything for anybody imaginable. The other piece is, next week is a lot of fun for the students, but it's my most exciting week of the year. It's homecoming week. And so to that end, we have different themes for every day of next week. And so we've given your sons all the themes. I believe if you go on Cub Notes, if you click on the link, it gives you all the themes for every single day. For example, Monday is Twin Day. So we're encouraging kids to dress like one of their classmates. Always trying to be appropriate, always telling kids you can't wear things that lewd references, drugs or alcohol, yada, yada, yada. And then we have spirit games where they compete with their homeroom classmates. It all culminates with the big pep rally on Friday of next week, where everybody's in the gym and everything goes crazy. And then that evening they have the big football game over at Hazel Park. All right, homecoming dance is on Saturday. Homecoming is a date dance. As far as attire, I'm not gonna say semi-formal, but a sport coat is expected. And I give the recommendation to all the guys, please put something in your pocket that has your name in it. I can't tell you, I mean, everybody wears a black or a blue sport coat. They all pile them up as soon as they walk in the door. And then when it's time to go, let me tell you this, your son has no idea the maker of his sport coat. So when we say, well, what kind of jacket is it? Blue. What size? Mine. And it's just, but if you could put something in his pocket, it increases the likelihood of it getting back home to you versus you sending me an email on Monday saying, Mr. Chandler, find my sport coat now. It hasn't happened in 16 years, and it probably won't, to be honest with you. Next week, in addition to all the different themes, on Tuesday we have the Pledge Detroit kickoff. So I think many of you all that have been here for a couple of years already know this is a big deal for us. This is our major school fundraiser. This is probably one of the most successful student-led fundraisers, at any high school. The last 2 years they've raised $200,000 plus, and those funds fund all the student activities. So it pays for the various trips, it pays for the moderator stipends, it paid for the backfield blast that we had a couple of weeks ago. And so what we ask our students to do is twofold. One part of it is the service component. And so this year, I believe all sophomores are going to Chandler Park to do a day of service. So we'll leave out of here. This is a mandatory day of school, right? Unless there's a legitimate reason why he shouldn't be here, we expect all of our young men not to just study together, but to labor together as well. And so we go to Chandler Park and we do various tasks for them. One of the major ones is kind of clearing the brush off of the fence line in the neighborhood so neighbors can walk down the street, so kids can walk down the street in a very safe way. This year we were able to partner up with Life Remodeled. Some of you all didn't know Life Remodeled started in the city of Detroit about 5 years ago, doing major projects for Detroit public schools. They were at Cody. They helped Cody build a new football field as well as replacing their roof and gym floor. They were over at Denby creating a playground for the neighborhood. Then they were also over at Cody, Denby, and Osborne. And so this year they're working on the Durfee project. And so they're hoping within a week to get 12,000 volunteers to make clear paths to all the schools in the neighborhood for all the kids to be able to walk there safely without fear of anybody harming them or threatening their way home. So we're excited. Part of this too, I mean, there's the service and the fundraising piece. The fundraising is a good time. We're asking all of our students to bring in $142 each. The piece that they don't tell you is that we tell them, don't just go to mom and dad and ask for a check for $142. But what a lot of them do is the day before, mom or dad need a check for $142. We tell them to contact different relatives. Ask for if you got 14 people, get $10 per person, and you're at your goal. And so if they come to you and just say, write the check, push them out there and tell them, hey, contact grandpa and grandma. Like, you need to do your due diligence as well. The other piece, parent-teacher conferences, just going down the list. Many of you all are already familiar with it. Nothing really has changed with this respect. We're still over at UD Mercy. On the 3rd, we have L through Z, and then on the 4th is A through K. If you have extenuating circumstances that prohibit you from being able to go one of those nights, you don't really need to send us an email to tell us. Just go ahead and go, right? I mean, I'm not telling everybody just do what you want to do. But if there's something that comes up, otherwise it wouldn't be manageable. There'd be way too many people at one time. Something new for us, October the 8th through the 12th, we're doing something called Health and Wellness Week. This coincides with the National Mental Illness Awareness Week. What we're trying to do is we're taking the umbrella term of addiction and trying to unpackage that so that our young men understand how it could impact them now or in the future. So addiction with respect to drugs and alcohol, addiction with respect to technology, addiction with respect to possibly pornography, all those different entities. And so each day we're going to have different activities. So to that end, we're asking our guys to go device-free for that week. Right? Right. If that's how you respond, imagine how they respond. But, right, it's October the 8th through the 12th. I would challenge you, honestly, to continue this at home. Because one thing we learned is that our young men model what they see. And so when we tell them to put their things away, but we're at the table like, oh, I got one more work email. Oh, hold on, I just need to check this last thing. They look at us and say, yeah, okay. There's always an exception to every rule that you make. And so during this week, different things that are going to be happening is we're offering yoga during their free periods. Or this is a space where they gather after they eat their lunch and just hang out with their friends. A lot of video game playing normally. So during this week, we're not going to allow that. Instead, we're going to have old school backyard games. There's Jenga, there's checkers, there's chess, there's ping pong. Go out back, play with your friends, have a good time, socialize. You don't have to have a headset on to talk to the guy that sits right next to you, right? And it works. And so we're fans of balance. And so our goal is not to vilify technology, but to show them that sometimes when you put this stuff away, you get a whole nother experience of quality of life. And so we're going to give you all more details as we get closer. We have a question in the back? Yes. Yep. So we're communicating. Yes, so we're communicating out, we're finalizing all of the final details so we can send it out to everybody. Again, we want this to be buy-in. We don't want to just make a decision in the vacuum. We want to make sure we get buy-in from everybody across the board. So I think everybody probably knows all the studies are showing that these kids are really struggling with establishing boundaries for themselves, and with technology, it's unlimited access to the world. And they just don't know how to shut it off. When we talk about, so in the Student Affairs Office, there's a clinic. I'm sorry, I'm taking up way too much time. Now, up in the Student Affairs Office, we have a clinic. Just the number of headaches that we've seen in the last couple of years, and I'm not saying that it's immediately correlated to technology, but the time that they spend in front of screens is way disproportionate to the amount of time that they need to or should. We had a presentation for the freshmen about Fortnite, which some of you guys may or may not have. Some of you all roll your eyes immediately. I said Fortnite. I'd encourage you to learn a little bit about Fortnite because your kids are spending a lot of time playing Fortnite. Even if it's a simple Google, what is Fortnite, and just find out. I mean, we had kids that said they spent like 8 hours one day playing it, and some of you guys are like, that's my kid or my house. It was funny when the students presented, what they said was, listen, the best thing my parents do is establish parameters. They tell me no. Or they tell me I can't do it during the week. And I know as parents it's difficult, but it's also necessary for their success. So Health and Wellness Week will give you more information, but just to preview what you should expect. On the calendar also put the sophomore retreats. I think it's funny that it falls right under Health and Wellness Week. Sometimes getting away, in many cases getting away is the best thing for our young men. And so all the sophomore retreats are scheduled for Thursday and Friday. What happens is when they get here Thursday morning, they have their bags and their belongings. Brief orientation in here, then they take off and go on retreat. And then spend the night, and they're back here by the end of the day on Friday. And so all three of those dates are on the calendar because I'd encourage you to talk to your young men to find out which of these dates fits best into your schedule. Instead, most of them wait until the last minute and say, oh, I want to go. And that's when all the tests have mounted up. That's when they have practice. That's when they have games. But now's a chance to figure it out. If they want to sign up for retreats, Mr. Gall, where do they normally?
So a couple ways we'll be able to find the link that'll be going out soon, but also your son can see us in the faithful service office. They know where we're at. Just have them come talk to us and get them on the list.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gall. So again, I'm not going to hit all of these dates on here. I just wanted to unpackage some of them. A big deal for us is the UDJ open house. I will say that the expectation is that the vast majority of our guys come here just because we want parents that come to visit to get the unfiltered truth from our students, right? Like we walk the students through the building so they understand what spaces are, but we don't tell them what to say and what not to say, which sometimes can be dangerous. But at the same time, you know what? I mean, just like any institution, I love this place. We're not perfect, so we would hope that the students would volunteer on that Sunday for at least a morning shift or an afternoon shift to at least walk one or two families through the building and explain their experience to some of our potential Cubs. Other than that, parent-teacher conferences, Easter break, final exams, Cedar Point. I mean, what better way to end the year, June the 3rd, hopping on a roller coaster that goes a ridiculous speed that's probably going to get stuck on the top, and then, you know, you sit out in the sun all day. It's a good time. So I don't know if there are any questions about anything that we've covered.
Is there a sophomore college night?
I'll find out for you. I will. After this, I'll go upstairs and look at my calendar and let you know what the night is. Anything else? Yes?
Do most students do both sophomore retreats, the one in the spring too, or
Normally they pick one.
they just do one?
Yep, they'll do one retreat.
We offer like 3 opportunities because we recognize with athletic schedules or other, co-curricular things that may be involved in, that we pick dates that fall, that work in between some sports seasons or at the end of certain sports seasons, so that gives them the opportunity. It's the same retreat opportunity, and they'll choose one that they're best.
Anything else?
They
Yes.
have ACC practice?
The PSAT is on October the 10th. And so October the 10th, it's basically a half a day. It's only for 10th graders and 11th graders. So they need to be here by 8 o'clock, and that's when they take the practice SAT. But all 10th graders are expected to be here, and all 11th graders are expected to be here as well.
So they only do the SAT, not the ACC?
Correct. Yep, Mr. Gillen.
The sophomore retreat, they'll be out of school for 2 days, I believe.
Yep.
Do their teachers judge their workload or assignments during that time, or are they aware of their time away, give them extra time?
Right, so Mr. Gall and his office always send out a list to all the teachers so that they know beforehand who's going to be on retreat. And so for every day that you miss, you get a day to make up. And so assignments that were due, so they miss Thursday, they miss Friday, and so their assignments wouldn't start to be due until Wednesday and Thursday of the next week. But it's incumbent, that's a great question, especially with sophomore year, it's incumbent upon them to still communicate with their teachers. A lot of them just assume, and then they're like, well, my teacher didn't ask for the assignment. And it's like, well, they should know when they come back. Let's go ahead and start hitting the ground running.
Just for clarification, is the sophomore retreat mandatory?
It is not mandatory. Highly encouraged, but it's not mandatory. Yep. Anyone else? All right, so in a moment, I'm going to run upstairs to go and find out the date for the sophomore college night. But as I prepare to do that, I'd like to invite our director of director of school counseling, Mr. Jim Hassett, up here. Mr. Hassett, how many years have you been here?
Starting my 18th year.
Starting his 18th year. I would encourage you, if you really want a conversation started with your son, ask him to repeat one of the jokes that Mr. Hassett has said to him before. It's probably not going to be funny, but...
You see that bus go by?
No, Mr. Hassett is a great guy. As I tell him all the time, I have really young kids. Anytime I have issues with my kids, he's the first guy that I call. Always going above and beyond. I'm a big fan of our counseling department. But Mr. Hassett is going to introduce himself and talk about our department before introducing Mr. Hogan.
Well, it's funny you should mention the jokes, Kyle. As a counselor, part of our gifts is to be intuitive and discerning. And so right now, my intuition is telling me Mr. Trudell is wondering, is he going to be done in 5 minutes? Mr. Chandler, I was going to intuit, and I was absolutely right, was wondering, is he going to tell you a joke? And I have to say the answer was no. I was going to tell you 2 jokes. And he's also wondering if one of those is going to be a cannibal joke, and the answer is no. Okay? No, actually, I hadn't planned on telling you a joke, but I will. My favorite jokes are invisible man jokes. And so you heard about the invisible man and the invisible woman getting married, huh? Oh, yeah, they had kids, but you know what? They were nothing to look at either. And then the invisible man walked into the doctor's office, and the receptionist says, Doctor, the invisible man is here. He says, tell him I can't see him now. Those are kind of good jokes for counselors. So it's one of our goals is to make sure your son is not invisible at this school. Okay? And so in 4.5 minutes, I'm going to talk to you about 4 things. I want to give you 2 reminders. And I will do that with talking about crocuses and pumpkins and mums. And I want to give you a that would be, and then something about school counseling, and then a tool you can walk out of here with and use right away. So the first thing I want to remind you of is about crocuses. That is a crocus. Crocuses, and those are snowflakes. Crocuses are the first flower that blooms, right? Sometimes they actually push up right out of the snow, and then you come all the way across here, and right now if you go to Kroger's, you're going to start seeing, amidst the pumpkins, you're going to see all kinds of, what kind of flowers? That's right. And you know what? You can stand over a mum and scream at it as much as you want to get going. Come on, get with it. And it is not going to germinate and bloom until it's time. You know, the guys aren't much different than their parents in many ways. They all want to be this crocus. But you know what? They're all on their own time. And so what we can do is till the soil and try to nurture them along, but your sons are on their own schedule. And so take heart. My son was a mum, and whatever flower grows over here. But he came around. Okay, so one thing, be patient. This is a formation process, 4 years. Sophomore slump, we got your son. The second thing I want to remind you of, or give you a reassurance, really, it's not a reminder, is the letter E. Kind of the letter E. This is isn't this how life is? You know, particularly when you're dealing with 4 years, it feels like it should be such a linear process. They keep going up and up. But that's not how life is. And around here, I don't care what happens, everybody takes their knocks. And it's sort of like, oh yeah, things are going so good, I get it. Oh no. You know? And then it gets a little dark down here, but guess what? I'm at U of D, life is good, I'm a sophomore. Uh-oh. Man, I've got a D on this, I got that thing. And then junior year, everything's looking good, now you're an upperclassman, and then you get your junior paper. But so take heart. Again, Kairos, the word Kairos, the capstone retreat, is about readiness, that moment of readiness. And when they go on their retreat senior year, there's a readiness there. That's why we don't do it junior year. They're not quite ready. So take heart, be reassured that your sons, we got them. We know what we're doing. Let them take their licks, okay? Let them have that. Because you know what? Look at all the good things that happen in the darkness here. You know, I have no idea what's going on in the soil here, but look what pops up all the way along. Okay? So take heart. That's the reassurance. Those are 2 reassurances. Your sons are going to be okay. Let them have their ups and downs. That's part of the process. This has a bowling ball in it because I couldn't find bunch of books that were heavy as this 18-pound bowling ball. This is the weight your son carries around all the time. As a fact, when they're seniors, here's how they sit down. They get so used to carrying these weights. Sit like that, you know. And so as counselors, we're saying, dude, take that weight off. And when they do it, they're so relieved. Your sons are carrying, with great dignity, these interior weights. And you'd never know it. Their arm could be falling off, and you'd ask them, how are they doing? And they say, good, right? So one of the roles of counseling is to help them unpack those interior weights, those doubts, those worries, struggles with their academics, relationship things, struggles they're having with their addictions, as Mr. Chandler said. So one of our roles is to help them problem solve and to help them take a look and start looking at those, reflecting on those weights, okay? And we do that in a variety of ways. One thing, we're in front of your son 6 times a year with guidance programming. We're going to be meeting with them once a month. Our departments go off campus, and then we take the kids period by period. So the social studies classes are going. We get period 1, all the kids from 7 to 10. We'll be talking about self-advocacy, mind, body, spirit, in its various ways. So they get a sense of us. And then we do a lot of small group and individual counseling. So that's how we help them, unload these weights, okay? And there's a lot of people around the building who are doing the same thing. We're just in the catbird position of having the time and the mandate to do it, okay? The last thing is, right here, keep away from the dark side. You all have this. The best shot we have to get what we want, and I say that without making this sound like a manipulative tool. It's not a manipulation. But the best shot we have is on the strength of the relationship. And by definition, when we criticize, blame, complain, nag, bribe to control, reward to control, resent, it puts a wedge in the relationship and takes us further away from where we want to be. Go to the light side, okay? So you can put this right up on your refrigerator. I did with my 28-year-old and my 31-year-old. Even at 24, she'd pull this off the refrigerator and go, Dad, huh? So anyway, this is good spirituality and good psychology. The actual words are from William Glasser's choice theory. If you want to know more about it, I'll be happy to tell you. I'm a geek on that. The write-ups are from Father Leo Cachet, who's a retreat director at Manresa. So you're on good spiritual grounds and good psychological grounds with this. You can pray over these things, okay? So there you go. Tony, I don't know how long that was, but I'm finished. Thank you. Thank you. Call us anytime, okay? Oh, great. It's a great privilege to introduce our speaker, Dr. Tim Hogan, whose son graduated from here 2 years ago. He's a sophomore at University of Notre Dame, where Tim got his undergraduate degree. Tim is a downriver rat. I say that affectionately because I grew up in Wyandotte and Trenton. Tim as well in Lincoln Park. From University of Notre Dame, he went on to be a campus minister and a teacher at Aquinas High School in Southgate. Then he went on to get his doctorate at Fuller School of Psychology in Los Angeles. From there, he went to Children's Hospital and did clinical work with children, trauma victims, and with children who were experiencing diabetes. While he was there, he noticed, obviously, family relations and how some of these traumas broke families, some strengthened families, which sort of piqued his interest in how to create healthy families. So he went on to make that his life focus. He now is a specialist in relationships. He speaks all over the country, holds workshops. He is also the director of Grace Counseling and was, whatever this thing is now, he is the designer of that E, as in G-R-A-C-E. If you notice, there's a leaf on the end of Grace. But he is a wonderful guy, and you'll be thoroughly informed and entertained by Dr. Tim Hogan.
Awesome. Will it bother you if I'm up here? My ego's a little too big to stand on the floor just in front of you all. I need to have the space. So actually, I think it would be good to have the microphone, and I want to look at my notes, and so that's all right with y'all. You know, it's really amazing to be here. I've never talked to parents at U of D. I've been where you were for 4 years until just a couple years ago, and this is such a sacred place. When Brendan, he kind of agreed to go here, and you know how we kind of get kids to agree to do things? And then once we got here, or as he was getting ready to go here, it was probably one of the hardest times in our family. You know, he was just so stressed, and he was terrified. The school he went to was a real small little private school. I called it Rivendell. Nothing bad ever happened there. No one ever fought there. Boys and girls did not display affection towards each other. It was a really wonderful Baptist little school. So anyway, but when he left here, he was so tearful and said, this was the best thing I've ever done in my life, was to come to UAD. And so this is really, it's pretty cool to be here. So what I want to do today, and I'll have you out of here by 8. Does that sound good? Or you're like, yeah, no, you'd like to stay longer, right? I know the feeling. I have high empathy skills, and we'll talk about that tonight, how you get empathy and how our young people are not getting empathy and why. So a couple things. We're going through this pretty radical shift in culture right now, and my goal tonight is to help you understand what that shift is so you could have compassion on yourself, and so that you know how to engage with your son so that he can learn the skills that a lot of young people are not learning. And so that's where we're going to go. And you know, one of my favorite people is Pope Francis, and he reminds us that, you know, we really become who we are through our families. And I'm going to show you a little exercise with that in a moment. And I love this quote of his, at least the first part. He says, the perfect family doesn't exist, nor is there a perfect husband or perfect wife. And that's not to even talk about the perfect mother-in-law. So he's like, we need to be gentle with ourselves. But I have a clinical question I'd like to start with, and that is kind of what the heck is going on? And what I mean by that is when we think about how different the world is that our young men are growing up in and compare that to our world, the differences are unbelievable. And the differences are it's the first time our culture has been through this in really 500 or 600 years. And so we really need to just touch on that briefly. And that's so that you can have compassion on yourself, you can be gentle, you won't have to drink as much at night because the pain will be less. So, and then how can we relate to this and address this as parents? I want you to think for a moment about your family when you were growing up. This is just for context, for us to remember just how crazy this world is that we live in. It's totally different. It's different in way. So think about, this is a way to think about your family. And I'd like you to think just for a couple minutes, and I'm going to ask you to share with someone around you just what comes to mind with this. But think about when you were growing up and the house you grew up in, and think about the neighborhood that you grew up in, and think about the church relationships that you had with your pastor, with elders, with priests, or whatever kind of church you went to. Think about schools, mentors, coaches. Now, just a real brief, I'm going to ask you to share this with the people around you. So I'm going to tell you, the family I grew up in, as Jim said, I grew up in Lincoln Park, Michigan, which ironically was a part of town that my wife was not allowed to go to when she was growing up. She grew up with a little more money than we did. In fact, like, we had a great childhood, but I was a junior at Notre Dame when I took a social psychology class when I found out that I was poor when I grew up. I never knew that I was poor. You know, I always thought we had everything we needed, but it turns out, in fact, I went to Dr. Kavanaugh and said, that my professor at the time, and said, you know, I think this book's got like a typo or something, right? Like, this is how much you make, this is how big the house was. I mean, we had 900 full square feet for 9 of us. Like, what does this mean? He said, no, he was actually a friend of mine. He said, actually, Tim, you were poor. So I was like, all right, well, how cool. We didn't know we were poor. Looking back, we did. But so anyway, I grew up in this house. We had 900 square feet, 9 people. I had 6 older sisters, no brothers. We had 1 full bathroom. We lived in a neighborhood that I kind of called an Irish ghetto, which might be disrespectful for those of you who are Irish, but I imagine you've been drinking already, so it doesn't bother you. But in our neighborhood, used to say you could pull out a 9-iron and hit someone who was drinking at any time of any day. I mean, people didn't even have that, but they were good with us. You know, we were a high discipline family, so I was 11 years old before I could start drinking openly in front of everybody. So we also were a big part of our parish. You know, my parents moved to this house that was 3 blocks from the Catholic school and Catholic parish. And you want to know why they picked that house? Because it was 3 blocks from the Catholic school and Catholic parish. That's how families used to think, like church was first, right? That's kind of how it went. And so we were real close to our neighbors. In our neighborhood, anybody could hit you. Did you guys grow up in one of those neighborhoods? Like if you made the neighbor across the street mad, they could hit you. And if you came home and you said, Mr. Ford hit me, what would the parents say? What would your mom and dad say? Yeah. Good, I'm going to hit you again. What are you doing embarrassing the family like that, young man, right? If you got in trouble with your teacher and came home and said, can you believe he yelled at me and gave me detention? What would happen? You'd get hit again, right? Today what happens? I wonder how that goes for today's teachers, right? You know, you're ready to detention. The teacher's now got to deal with a parent who thinks my son could never have done that, right? So things are a little different. So here's a way to think about this. Of all the relationships I grew up with, the question is, how many of those relationships reinforced our family's belief that Jesus was the center of the universe, center of history, center of life, center of reality? And if you look, if I drew a red line between me and all those relationships, you would see that of all the people and influences in my life, most of them had Jesus at the center. I mean, our football coach went to church, which was a little ironic. But anyway, our football coach, you'd see him at Mass. But now, think about how our young people are growing up today. And it may be different for you, and this picture may not be your picture, but I just want you to think about it. Think about the influences and the way our young men are getting formed. You know, we become the relationships we're in, right? You've heard you're the average of your 5 closest friends, right? Have you ever had this experience where you open your mouth and your parent comes out? Isn't that something? You know, like so like I would open my mouth and say something to my kids like, you know, you stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Have you ever said? And I think to myself, my therapist and I worked through that for like 6 months. And after 6 months of intense therapy, I am saying it to my kids. I'm doing exactly to my kids. It's uncanny. So here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to think about this. I'd like as you just take a quick glance think about your family growing up in your neighborhood. And we may get a whole bunch of different answers. But I want you to think about, what do you notice when you look at your family growing up and the influences in your life, and then think about your sons and the influences they have in their life? Ideas, people, influences. And then what I'd love for you to say is just check in with each other and say, well, just what comes to mind. Today's families are more what? So go ahead and just take 2 or 3 minutes, 2 minutes, and just turn to someone around you, whoever you feel like talking to. And you know what? If you've been talking all day and you're done, and you're sitting there saying, I'm just done, then what I'd love for you to do is just sit there and think about what you're going to do when you get home, or go get another cup of coffee. And if someone asks you to talk, just look at them and say, no, I'm done. All right? You don't have to do this. So go ahead. But it is just going to be a minute or 2 to just share these ideas. Answer that last question. Today's families are more what? don't you finish up that paragraph and let them talk? All right, and why don't you go ahead and finish your thought? All right, and just briefly here, just using a couple words, what are some words that come to mind when you say today's families are more what? Broken, open, distracted, busy, scheduled, protective, yeah.
Fearful.
What's that?
Fearful.
Fearful. Yeah. Yeah. And you know what's kind of funny about this? I have worked on this kind of thing, you know, really from, I've gone several thousand miles west and several thousand miles east, and really a few different countries and lots of different states, because the publisher I work for sends me to these places and I reluctantly go when they need someone in Hawaii to talk about culture. And I land in Hawaii and I think, what do I know about Hawaiian culture? And I get really worried, and then I ask this question, today's families are more, and those words come up over and over: scheduled, pressured, busy, protected, like differently organized. You know, families are different today. You know, there just aren't a whole lot of mom and dad and 3 kids at home. That's just not, I mean, that was true for like 18 years out of the whole U.S. history, but it's just not, and we call it normal. But it's just, our families are more creative. It's just a very different world that we live in. And here's the thing, it's so easy to feel overwhelmed, and then it's so easy to feel guilty, like there's something wrong with us, right? Like, I mean, do you ever do that? Like, I'm a psychologist, for goodness sakes, and you know, Jim has rescued me. He has saved my life for all 4 years Brendan was here. Because, you know, Brendan, he's like an amazing kid. And he's at Notre Dame. He's in the marching band. And in fact, if you watch the latest halftime show, he gets like 3 full seconds of close-up on his face. So he's had his 3 seconds of fame. He's done now. But I mean, honestly, I'd come home and I'd be like, he wouldn't, you know, he'd stay up till 3 in the morning. Then it'd be hard to wake up in the morning. I mean, we did everything. We woke him up. We promised him things. We promised him gifts. Like, we did anything. We tickled him, slapped him, literally left a water gun in the fridge like a dog, and we'd shoot him like a dog with the water gun in the morning to wake him up because we couldn't get him up. And then, or we'd lay in bed and say, well, he's just going to be late for him. You'd lay in bed like, oh my gosh, he's late right now, and it's our fault he's late. And you know, it was like the worst thing we've ever did is let him be late because he didn't wake up on time. So anyway, thank you, Jim. But we feel guilty because this world is so different. What I want to do in about 5 minutes is just do a crash course on why the world is so different and why we feel all the pressure as parents and why it's so easy to feel like we're not doing a good enough job. And you ever have those moments where you feel like, what did he just say to me? I would never say that to my dad. Like, my dad would punch me in the mouth if I said that. Have you ever had that moment with your kids? Yeah, right. I haven't, but I imagine you might have. You know, I'm a psychologist, and I really, other than a few problems with him waking up, I really never. So think about how the information revolution has affected us. Isn't it wild that thing on the left, I have to tell young people, that's called a telephone. Yeah. And when it used to ring in the house, just think of this, just for a second, when that phone would ring, any of the 9 of us could pick it up, right? Now, of course, I always did because I had nothing to do with no brothers. So I'd pick up the phone, and what'd I say? Hogan Residence, this is Tim, who's calling? And they would say, like, this is Gregory, I'm calling for Mary Ellen. And I'd say, okay, let me get her. Mary Ellen, it's Gregory. Now all 9 of us knew that Gregory was calling for Mary Ellen. It was really cool. But it was even better than that in our house because I was like a burgeoning psychologist. So I'd give her the phone and I would just sit there because it was the most interesting thing happening when the girls would talk to their boyfriends. It really was. And so, and then my dad, they'd complain and complain. And finally my dad said, okay, so he got one of these 30-foot cords, you know, one of these like long cords. So they would take the cord and they'd wind it down the stairs and go into the cellar and they'd close the cellar door. And I would stay upstairs until I heard the cellar door close. And then I'd tiptoe downstairs and I'd hear every word. And that allowed me to assess the relative health of the men that were calling on my sisters. And I could then sabotage relationships as needed. True story. This is filmed. I have to trust my sister's never going to see this. She was engaged to a guy. And he was was living in Chicago, and he was a bad person. Like, he cheated on her, and I knew he cheated on her because I overheard it in the conversation. And so he called. He was back in town. He called to see her, and I said, hello, Hogan residence. And I recognized his voice, and I said, is this Stephen? It was Gregory. And I said, is this Stephen? On purpose. And they got into a big fight, and they broke up on that trip home, and she never married him. So really, you know, do you ever get frustrated that our kids get to pick their own spouses? Isn't that just the craziest thing? How did we get here in history where they pick their spouses? Everybody knows that we would do a better job than our kids at picking. I mean, just look at your own marriage, for goodness sakes. Okay, right? And you picked them. Don't blame anyone else. Okay, and then we had that one TV, right? The one TV, the whole house watched the one TV. I remember my dad won the Ushers Club drawing. I think his returns on that investment were like, you know, $1 for every $700 he spent. But he won that check. And he got that color TV, we put it in, and all 9 of us would gather around and have to watch something that we all liked. Now, which was oddly always what my dad liked, but that was a different story. And then you turn the channel to all 6 channels, right, if no one else was watching it, and then the channel changer would break because it was plastic and you have to use pliers to change the thing. Like, that was life. That was then. And just think about that now. Think about everything we just lost with this information revolution. We don't get to monitor our kids. I mean, unless you're really good at IT. And I do have tricks for you if you really want to get into that. If you're willing to pay about $100 a year, you can actually spy pretty well. But I would never do that, just to be clear in the camera. I would never do that to my children. That would be invasive. Yeah, no. But I can tell you the program. It's about $100 a computer. Okay. And so the thing is, technology is evolving so much faster than this electrical system, right? Like, we are getting smarter for sure, but not at this rate. 50 years ago, look at that, 256,000 megabytes of information in our pocket. I mean, I joked when I was in grad school, the guy downstairs and I, when we ran the data for our dissertations, we literally hit send. Now, this wasn't that long ago. This was in the early 90s. You'd hit send, you'd do it and hit go and go to bed. And when you woke up, all the charts would be filled because that's how long it took on a relatively new computer. Okay, so we know things are different. So what has driven this? How did we get here? We have to remember that we just went through this major revolution. This information revolution sparked an economic revolution. It wasn't that long ago that our boys did not have to study if they wanted to get married and raise a family and get a cottage up north, right? When I was growing up, everyone used to sit on our porch and drink Stroh's beer and listen to the Tigers games. And there was a guy across the street. He owned a house. He had a boat. He had a cottage up north, and he flew planes. He'd go to the Grosseille Airport, and he'd fly planes, and he'd fly over us and throw stuff at us. That was before 9/11, I imagine. And he worked on the line, and he used to say to me, Timmy, if school doesn't work out for you, just come to me. I can get you in. And the amount of money you could make in those high-wage, low-skilled jobs, those jobs were everywhere. In every city you go to across the country, in the world, this has happened. Because all those jobs have now moved to places where there were people who were poor and desperate enough to work them. But what does that do to us in this culture? That creates a lot of fear, doesn't it? This achievement pressure that we all live with. I know that I feel that. Do you feel that? Like, it's like every time there's a B, it's like, oh my gosh, we need to grieve. I'm in denial, honey. How about you? No, I'm working through it. I'm a little angry, but it's like a major loss. And by the way, if you want these slides, just email me at Tim, and it'll come up. Oh, there it is, right there, drtimhogan.com. You see that? Isn't that cool? Brendan created that for me, because I don't know how to work on my computer all that well. And just email me at tim@drtimhogan.com, and I'll send you a copy of the slides, and it'll all be good. The other thing that's happened is it's taking longer and longer for young people to get through adolescence. Adolescence used to end at 18, right? And I'm not complaining. It was great. When I turned 18, in our family, you would start paying rent to be at home. And it wasn't like mean, or it wasn't like get out of here. It was just you're an adult now. When I got into Notre Dame, and my dad said, wow, that's really awesome, but isn't that expensive? How are you going to pay for Notre Dame? So they used to send the bills home, and it would say to the parents of Timothy Hogan, and he'd cross out to the parents of and just forward it to me. And it wasn't like, it's just not the way you're an adult. Why would I pay for your college? It just wasn't part of the, and that is the way it used to be. Today, because you need not just an undergrad, now you need a graduate degree if you want to make a really good living and live in a good neighborhood, right? So now there's all this achievement pressure. So when you feel that pressure, when you feel the grief that comes with 1B, remember that's part of a wider cultural pressure that we feel. We have a lot of fear that if our kids don't hit it out of the park, they're not going to make it. We also have been through this relationship revolution, which I think is the thing I want to focus on in the time we have here, which is our relationships, as we know, are way more virtual, right? They're far less, they're less face-to-face. You know, we spend less time with each other. Let me ask you this. When you were a kid, where would you go and play? Outside. And where would you go outside? Would you just go out on the porch? How far would you go? As far as you could, right? The park? Yeah, when I ask people that, they tend to say, like, where there's a creek or the river or the hills or the open fields. We used to go catch butterflies. I mean, like, there was a real draw to nature. That has disappeared in our young people, hasn't it? I mean, the cord doesn't stretch all the way to the park. So you have to be at home to play the games that you want to play. And here's the interesting thing. When kids spend less time in nature, symptoms of ADHD, depression, anxiety all go up. And when you take those kids back into nature, all those symptoms start coming down. If you're interested, there's a great book about this. It's actually not a great book. The research in it is great, but it's a really hard read. But I'm happy to share that with you. There's I used to tell people, you know, some books you need a cup of coffee for. And I said, you know, that this book, it's called Last Child in the Woods. You need other stimulants for. I won't even say it. That's so improper of me to mention things like that. Okay, well, our kids, remember, less parental supervision, less family supervision, because isn't it almost impossible to supervise what happens on their phone and what they do on their computer? I mean, I'm going to admit this, like when Brendan was here, we would text him on his phone, and of course he wouldn't answer until he got his phone app hooked up to his computer. So he'd be in class. If you want to send him a detention to Notre Dame, that's great. He needed this. He'd be in class, and we'd text him, and he would answer us like mid-school day because he had it into his, so the screens are always right there. The other thing we're seeing is a real decline in emotional intelligence. And that means the ability to know how to handle a difficult situation. You may have seen this, but just bear with me, watch it one more time.
It's just pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's creeping up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless, and I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Have a nail in your head.
It's not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet it. We got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just hanging out. Maybe the nail is possible.
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get okay, but this is fine.
Sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. all the sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Sounds Come on, if you would just
Don't.
Isn't that great? So what makes that funny, for those of you who are laughing, probably those of you who are married, is you know that social relationships are not logical things. They're not things that follow just the rules of language, like texting does, right? Relationships, sometimes you're with someone and you know what the problem is, but you cannot solve it for them. You need to just be in connection, be in relationship. So the point is, emotional intelligence means being able to read all the subtle, the cues that are being sent and know how to manage difficult situations. And that is the thing that our boys are not getting. Because they're spending so much time interacting on computers and texting, they're not getting the amount of time. In fact, you know, if you look in the world of artificial intelligence, what they're saying in that is computers are going to do more and more and more of what we normally do. But you know the one thing computers cannot figure out? They can't figure out this human social interaction thing. And why is that? Because it takes millions of interactions, literally hundreds of thousands of social interactions to learn what does that mean, and what does that mean, and what do those eyes mean, what does that mouth mean? Wait, so you don't tell that joke when you're at a funeral home? Okay, note to self, don't tell that joke. It was really funny, but I learned that when I was like 7 years old. I was making jokes about my grandpa who was in the casket. That's a whole different thing. Not enough Ritalin that day, I guess. So this is the thing that I think we need to address with our kids. And so what we're saying is there is, and just one quick thing. One of the most important things we can learn when we're growing up is empathy, right? Learning how to put ourselves in someone else's shoes and connect with it in a way that's not sympathetic where we collapse, but where we really get other people. Here's why empathy, the rates of empathy are going down year by year. Now, you may know this makes it in the news. Every time they redo the study at U of M, and they've been doing this now for about the last 10 years, they come out with their study and say, well, we've been studying empathy for 35 years, and this year, the rates at U of M are lower than ever before. Which, when you consider a place like U of M, where the rates already start so low to begin with, it's really remarkable that we even go lower, right? Just seeing how many state fans there are here.
Go Green.
Fans. Go Green. Yeah, those are the only people who left. Everyone else is like, okay, we're leaving, honey, get your stuff. And why is that? Why is that so difficult? That's difficult because for empathy to develop, it's a very complicated neurochemical process in the brain. It not only requires mirror neurons and visual neurons to fire and show you, what am I seeing? What am I seeing? Oh, I see the size of the mouth going down. They might be a little bit sad, or they're tight. They might be a little angry. But for real empathy to happen, it has to go through a part of the brain called the insula. The insula connects with our body. It connects from the top part of the brain down into the parts of the brain that sense our body functioning. And that insula doesn't work very efficiently. For those of you who know the brain, you know the insula is not myelinated. And so it takes more time, which means to really develop empathy takes time. It takes hanging out with people where we're not distracted, and I'm just kind of getting you, and you're just kind of getting me, and over time I'm learning this is what it's like to be with another human being. This is the thing, this slow way of interacting and time face to face is what we need to develop empathy. And just because of culture, not because kids are bad or they got too many phones, the culture has just shifted, and so we're seeing a generation get older without that. So that's really what, and you're beginning to see this. So these declines in emotional intelligence, increase in toddler defense system, I can tell you about that. That's kind of funny, but I want to get you out of here on time. So, and people have fewer friends and they report being more lonely. So this is just, and so as a summary, think about this, how our nervous system has been overloaded. This is from Tom Friedman. He said 12 years ago now, actually, he said, Facebook didn't exist, Twitter was a sound, the cloud was in the sky, 4G meant a parking place, LinkedIn was a prison, applications were what you sent to college, and Skype for most people was a typo. All that just changed. 12 years ago, we didn't know what any of that stuff was. We were still spending time with each other. We were still communicating by talking or picking up the phone and sensing your tone of voice to know whether you were calling in a good mood or bad mood. Now, you have to go on Facebook and see whatever you're faking to make yourself feel better when you write. That's what I do. Don't you kind of do that? I find myself thinking that all the time, but that's a whole other thing. So the good news is today's kids are doing a lot of things better. They get in fewer car accidents. They're drinking less. Our young guys, on average, are drinking less, and they're having less sex. And there's 91% decrease in teen pregnancy from the time, probably a lot of us, in 1991 compared to now. Like a 91% decrease, which does lead us to the conclusion that when you're at home playing Fortnite, you cannot get a girl pregnant, right? With all that good stuff, there's also a bunch of bad stuff. We know depression is way up. Suicide rates are way up. There's this whole issue of gender. And kids today get pressure from the time they're young. They got to figure out their gender. What am I? There's like 51 options. I should start studying now. When we grew up, you were straight. And if you were anything else, you're going to get your butt kicked. So just be straight. So the pressure was on it. And I know that was terrible, and it was really hard for people who had LGBTQ issues. It was terrible, and I know that. I just did a webinar on it. I have tons of compassion. But man, I think it was easier in some ways for a lot of kids. I see kids today come in who aren't gay, but they have to go through this whole process because they're getting all these messages. I mean, I got those messages from people because I would call boys honey and stuff. But I did that because I grew up with girls, and that's how I was like, come here, honey, do you want to go to football practice? And they look at me like, what are you, gay? And I'm like, I don't think so. But do gay people talk like that? Maybe I need to think about this, right? I don't know. Today, you say you might be gay, and kids are like, oh, I got to go to a therapist. I got to see if I'm gay. I just think it's so much more difficult. That's just my bias. And the problem is we just don't treat young people enough. So let's get to what we're going to do. Here's a cool thing. I'll just say this rather than teach it. I think every now and then, as those of us who have been Jesus followers, whether we're Catholic, evangelical, Protestant, whatever, we really need to stop every now and then and look around the world and say most of the good stuff that's going on in the world came to the world because Jesus followers brought it. When you look at the labor movement, feeding the poor, the civil rights movement, hospitals, university, these are all Jesus followers that made the world a better place. The reality, though, is all those things are being taken on now by people who aren't necessarily Jesus followers. So the question is, as people who are spiritual, grounded Jesus followers, what is our job? I think our job is to really deal with culture and to create a more social and emotionally sensitive world. And this is what I want to show you here. You probably want these slides from me because, I mean, this is interesting. I think this would be helpful to look at, and it's all free. So it's not like you're going to say, can I have your slides? And I'm going to be like, yeah, give me your credit card number. It's $27. This is, if you want to go to a place called casel.org, CASEL.org, they talk about organizing these human skills into 5 learning. These are the 5 things young people aren't getting. And it has to do with understanding and managing myself, understanding and managing my relationships, and then making good decisions. Now here's the great news. As you send your boys here, and I sent my son here, that stuff is baked right into the Catholic education. It's baked right into Jesuit spirituality. In fact, Ignatian spirituality has this stuff as a primary edge of learning. So the boys are getting it here. So let me just tell you kind of what I'm talking about. The first thing is this whole self-awareness thing, like being more self-aware. When our brain is being bombarded by electronics all day long, we lose a sense of what's really going on inside, which is why I love this quote from James Joyce. Mr. Duffy lived a short distance from his body, right? Do you ever feel like that? Like you're really not all there? It's like I'm here, and someone will say, how you feeling? And you're like, not a clue. I have no idea how I'm feeling right now. All I know is that when I get home, there's a bottle of red wine waiting, and I'm going to drink it. And then I'm going to feel better. And people are like, oh, that's serious. But you know you're thinking it, so why don't you just... Yeah. So how do we do this? How do we increase self-awareness? I think the first thing we got to do is start at home. And one of the ways to do this is periodically, like the exam and prayer that was just wonderful that we did today. Wasn't that great? Isn't that so powerful? And it's really hard at first, but just to stop periodically and say, what's going on? One of the questions I ask myself, I close my eyes, I take a deep breath, and I kind of let my attention come right here. And I say, so what's the main thing right now? Like what's taking up most of the energy? As you're sitting here, you probably came up with stuff from your day, stuff about Google, Tim Ferriss, and busyness. Tim Ferriss is kind of a podcaster who's kind of like a guru. Everyone loves Tim Ferriss. How many people have heard of Tim Ferriss? Yeah, he's great. But he says some of the greatest things about busyness. And he really he's helped me to really cut back. The other thing, so when you're with your sons, you know, I don't know about yours, but how does it go when we ask our sons, how are you feeling, bud? How does that go? Fine, good. There are seasons, and sophomore year is probably one of those when you say, no, really. See how this goes. You look sad. What's going on? I know I did this with my daughter who's going through a really rough time. She was in the 6th grade at the time, actually, and I took her out to lunch because we knew she was going through a hard time, and I said, it was her first day of school, and her best friend had left the school, and I said, so, honey, how did it go today? She said, fine. I said, okay. But it might be hard your first day or whatever. She said, no, it's fine. I said, honey, why don't you just let your attention go right in here and just tell me, like, what's taking up space in there? Like, is it heavy or light or a little jittery? And she just looked up from her sandwich and said, you are not at work right now. 6th grade. Yeah, that was good. One of the things you can do is, some kids will go for this. Like say, all I want is a thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs in the middle. So when they come in the house, just say, hey, how's it going? Yes? No? Middle? And a lot of young guys will respond to that. They'll tell you good day, bad day, or kind of middle day. The other thing we can do is we really can't articulate the nonverbals. When we see that our kids really watch their face because their words don't mean anything, they don't. So the left hemisphere for a sophomore is barely connected with the rest of his social emotional functioning. So just watch the face. Say, hey, dude, you look tired. You want to take a nap or anything? Or you look down. You want a little snack or something? That's how they will learn their emotions, is by you mirroring them back. Now the key is, and I'm going to say this to all the moms, who are like, sweet, I can do this. Like, son, you look a little sad. Because you know what? I see your eyes and they don't want that. They want a very small amount of information, right? Sophomores can handle about a half sentence. After that, you're a complete annoying pain to them. So package your ideas in half sentences and you'll be good. But articulate it for them. Now, how do we manage breath? Now, there's a couple things we can do here, and I'll just show you one of the many. But you want to ask yourself when energy is high or energy is low. So we'll do this as we head to the finish line tonight. This is one of the great exercises. They call it bellows breath. And I'm going to suggest it for you. I'm pretty sure your son won't do it. If he does, you have a very special boy. But this is, for those of you who want to do it, you can try it. This is a way to kind of, it can energize you when you need energy, but it can also ground you. So what you do if you want to try this, and you don't have to, you can watch other people, but you put your hands like this, and then we'll practice once. You inhale when you go up, so you go, and then you exhale like a bell when you go down. Good, and we'll do like 10 of those. Ready? So here we go, 1 per second. Three more. All right, and you can let your eyes close and just take a little breath. And then after the lightheadedness leaves, you'll notice how you feel. And what you'll notice is that can be a real grounding experience. Then the question is, how do we deal more effectively in social relationships and social, in our social experiences? And here's just the main thing I want to say about this, and that is we really have to confront the mind's bias. Our mind is wired in such a way that in the way we scan, remember, and prime things. And what am I talking about? Our brain is wired more than anything to detect threat in our environment. That's how we've gotten to be so successful as humans. We're really good at threat. We're not so good at scanning for positive things. For example, and I'll use a sexist traditionalist approach to this. Let's say, or I'll do it the opposite way. Let's say your husband is home having taken care of the kids all day, and the wife is out, and she comes home, and she opens the door and says, "Wow, honey, look at you. That dinner smells great, and look at the kids' homework is already done. That's incredible. And it looks like you didn't get around to vacuuming yet, but boy, I noticed that the car is washed, and you balanced the checkbook." What's the one thing he's going to remember? You did not vacuum. Did you just say I didn't get around to vacuuming yet? Is that the one thing, right? Why is that? Because we're always scanning, and when we scan, we tend to see more negatives than positives. It's just the way our brain works. We also have a hardwired system to remember threats, right? Like if something bad has happened to you, or something bad has happened in your relationship, or something bad your son has done, you will remember it till the cows come home. But good things, our brain is not physically wired to remember positive things, because positive things are not as important for our survival as remembering when we were hurt. You probably know that, right? True story. I was talking to my wife within the past year, and we were talking about having kind of an argument, and she said something like, "Wait a minute, that's the same thing you said at Mike's wedding." And I said, "Your brother Mike?" And she said, "Yeah." They've been married like 32 years. How did you remember something from 32 years ago? That's because the brain, it's a trap for anything bad that's ever happened. So, and then the other thing, and this is the one you can take home, is priming. And here's the way priming works. Whatever we've been thinking about, we're more likely to experience down the road, right? And just a quick little example of this. We'll do it here in the room. What I'd like you to do, it takes 6 seconds. I'd like you to take 6 seconds and look around the room here, and I'd like you to identify everything you see that's red. Okay, so 6 seconds. On your mark, get set, go. And count how many things you see. Count them. Count the red things. Okay, if you can close your eyes now. And with your eyes closed, I'd like you to recall how many blue things you just saw. And then go ahead and open your eyes and see if you missed any blue things. Did you miss any blue things? You missed a lot of blue things because you primed your brain to look for red. That's how our brain works. But that's also how it works for positives and negatives. So if you're planning, people when they start getting unhappy in their marriage, by the way, they start thinking, "I think I might have married the wrong person. Let me check that theory out today." And you wake up and you're like, "Wow, leaves his socks on the floor. How about that? You know what? He hasn't cleaned that bathroom in forever. Oh my God, he didn't even say goodbye today. You know what? I make everyone's life. Has he ever offered to make someone's life?" And it just goes on and on. And you get to the end of the day, it's like, "Oh my gosh, I married the wrong person. That theory is correct." Try this. Try practicing gratitude like the exam and prayer does. I wonder if God's not blessing me more than I even imagine. I'm going to start looking for blessings every day and then just start doing it. This is related to gratitude, which is connected with this. And I'm going to tell you the best. You want to hear the best secret? If you really feel down and overwhelmed and frustrated and you want your life to be more positive, you want to know, this is like, I wrote about this for 2 years, about gratitude for 2 years. I read everything I could find. The first thing you do is you write the longest gratitude list you can find. Every person you know, the things you're grateful for. Go to your past, every memory. Go to every cool place you've been to, every great sensual experience you've ever been to, even the ones you can't tell your kids about, and write them all down. And then, here's the cool part, read them into a voice memo into your phone. And then in the morning, my ritual when I wake up is I put my Bluetooth headphones on and I I listen to my 12 minutes of gratitude. That reminds me of all the cool things I've experienced. It's really hard to have a bad day after you wake up and take 12 minutes listening to all the ways God has blessed you in your life. Okay. And this is something our kids need, because when our brain gets overwhelmed with electronics, it's easy to get cynical. It's easy to lose hope. But they need us to do this for them. So, yeah, sorry, that's a real fun one, but we won't do that today. And then the last thing is, how do we build, and then I'm going to close with this. How do we help our kids make good decisions? The good news is they're getting Ignatian formation here. They're getting formation, which is all about decision making. They're going to learn so many great ways to form their conscience and make great decisions. They're in a good place for that. We just have to help them. When it's time to make a decision, we have to help them go through a good decision-making process. Those are the 5 skills that today's young people are not getting. Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and social skills, and then good decision-making. If you look around at what's happening with a lot of young people today, these are the 5 areas that kids are getting worse and worse in. These are the 5 things that, as we, both through this education here and through our parenting, if we can up that level with kids, I think we can make a difference. This generation is going to have to go create the world, in a new way for us. This electronic world, they're going to be makers of this new world. And I think we have a chance to give them what they need to really, really make it better. And without this, I think we're going to be in some trouble. So I think I'm going to stop with that. Jim, is that all right? Yeah, anyone have any questions? And it is just a few minutes after 8. I said I'd stop at 8, and so there's a thing called boundaries. I don't have any, but I help others have boundaries. So, but I'll stay and answer questions or keep the dialogue going as long as you want to. But if you need to go, feel free to take off. Anyone have any questions or comments or? Thank you. You're welcome. All right.